to try and win the war with diplomacy.
The idea that they were not just your great enemy whom you fought and hoped to send to hell, but someone you could talk to. Partly it's Richard's belief that he could persuade people. If only he could meet them and talk to them, then he could get through to them. They could bring an end to the whole business of the crusade on terms that suited Richard by talking to Saladin himself.
But Saladin would not be so easily seduced. Believing he had the advantage, and considering it dishonorable to meet someone he intended to kill, Saladin politely declined to meet Richard.
I think Richard was taken aback when Saladin refused to meet him. He thought he was a persuasive character, but this didn't apparently cut ice with Saladin, in the sense that he, first of all, didn't trust Richard. He thought he would never keep his word. Second, he thought there was no possibility of reaching a peace treaty with Richard.
Early attempts at diplomacy failed, but Saladin decided to show Richard that he followed the chivalric code as well as any Christian knight. He sent the ailing King of England a gift. Saladin was proud of his reputation as a generous man. He had already given away thousands of horses to his troops at Acre. To Richard, he sent fruit for his illness. It seemed as if Saladin was impatient for Richard to recover. Soon, Richard was well again, and he descended on Acre. In Richard, the Muslim defenders faced a new kind of leader who fought from the front, risking his life alongside his troops. He seemed unstoppable.
The Muslim defenders were facing the crunch. The arrival of Richard meant that the pressure exerted by the Christians was now almost unbearable. They were very, very short of food, and Saladin didn't seem to be able to offer them relief.
From his hilltop camp, Saladin could do little to help. But he refused to let the Muslims in Acre surrender. Richard's onslaught continued. The Muslims resisted for almost a week, and still no relief came from Saladin. It seemed like the people of Acre were being left to die. Eventually, without Saladin's permission, they gave up the fight.
In the end, they forced his hand. They forced him to surrender the city. And this wasn't to his liking, but at the same time, everybody was exhausted. His resources were running out. He couldn't actually keep paying everybody. And he was forced to surrender Acre, at the same time regret the fact that he had to do so.
Saladin had enjoyed decades of loyalty and success. But now, against Richard, his authority was beginning to unravel. Christianity's new holy warrior had brought his own brand of hell to the Orient. It was at Acre that Richard, King of England, earned the title Lionheart.
Victory at the Siege of Acre was a great breakthrough for Richard. It meant that the Christians had been blessed by God. How else could they explain their victory? It also, in strategic terms, he knew would be a big step forward. It would help to break the power of Saladin, would help open the way to the holy city of Jerusalem.
With the Muslim-held port of Acre back in Christian hands, Richard the Lionheart, King of England, had completed the first stage of his quest for Jerusalem. He thanked God for his recent victory. But now, instead of marching on the holy city, he found himself guarding 3,000 Muslim prisoners in Acre's dungeons, taken hostage after the battle. He sent envoys to Saladin's camp to negotiate for their release. In exchange for the prisoners, Saladin was asked to give back Christendom's greatest holy relic, the so-called True Cross, which the Muslims had captured 4 years earlier. Christians believed it was part of the wood on which Christ was crucified. Saladin knew Richard valued the True Cross highly and hoped the Crusaders would not want to continue their march on Jerusalem without it. Risking the lives of 3,000 of his fellow Muslims, he delayed the exchange.